Welcome back, friends, and we are here. It's 2026. It's January. It's the start of the offseason. It's been a while since we've had a chance to chat with the Michigan football faithful, and I want to let you know what's going on MGoBlue Podcast before we get in the meat and potatoes of this offseason. Defend the Block. We got a lot of post-game episodes, and it's a basketball team that a little bump in the road, but is chugging right along at a record pace. So excited about what's going on there. So you can catch all those post-game episodes on Defend the Block. Conquering Heroes. It took the holidays off, but it will return a week from Thursday. So next Thursday, and we will have the head coach of the Michigan softball program, Bonnie Thal, and a hell of a recruiting class. And coming off a season, I know that they were very excited about. So a lot of momentum going into this softball season. So it'll be exciting to get her and talk about what she expects out of this team. But at this time, a voice that if you've been listening on the radio or on the Varsity Network app, you've heard his voice. Brian Bush takes no time off. And he is back with us again on In the Trenches. Mr. Bush, how are you?
Oh, that's not true, John. I take time off. It's just not now. That's okay.
That's right.
We're locked in, man. It's awesome. Obviously, a part of this little In the Trenches break was by design. Part of it was not, candidly. But yes, here we are. We are ready to rock and roll. And we will be, again, kind of figuring things out as we go, but our expectation here on In the Trenches is to introduce you to some of the new coaches, new players, tell you some stories about the returning players, and we'll react to some of the, plentiful news around the program here since we last talked at the Citrus Bowl down in Orlando. But also we're live on YouTube. We will do some of these YouTube 7 from 77s. Our friend Scott Patton saying, miss this podcast. John, your freezer must be full of Great Lakes fish. Can you confirm that, John Jansen?
I sure wish they were. I have, much like Mr. Brian Bush, not had many days off. So I have not been on the ice. I have no perch, no walleye, no whitefish, no nothing in the freezer. So I am hoping as we settle into this off season and ice continues to thicken up, I'm hoping to be able to get out there ASAP.
What's the number one? If you could have one fish in that freezer right now, what would it be?
Oh, it'd be walleye. There's no question about it. It'd be Great Lakes or inland lakes walleye. There is absolutely nothing better than a fish fry any night of the week, but especially if you're getting ready for the weekend. Friday night fish fry. Man, Scott, you're really rubbing it in right now. I bet Scott's been out and he's probably got a freezer full. He's just sitting there making me, have this painful moment. But I would love to be able to get out there for some Great Lakes walleye. You go on Lake Erie and it is catching. It's not fishing. So I'm hoping to get out there soon.
All right. Well, I have full confidence you will get there between then and kickoff, but we got a lot to talk about here. And let's simply start our first offseason 7 from 77 by, as we mentioned, it's been a little while. How would you describe the roller coaster, the emotions over the last month for you, for Michigan fans, for this program as a whole?
Oh, boy. I mean, the range of emotions. Since we were alive, I think it would start with embarrassment, anger, and then it would go into pride, and the pride of how, especially learning more of what was going on inside Schembechler Hall throughout the course of the season, talking to the coaches, with all that was going on behind the scenes for that group of assistant coaches to put together a 9-win season and keep these players focused and go to Orlando. And I know they didn't come away with a win, but that team was ready to play. My hat's off to all of those guys. I mean, other than Coach Alford, none of them are back. But I think they did a tremendous job of keeping the players focused, keeping the train on the tracks. So that's where the pride comes from. And then I guess the range of emotions would go to, anticipation, some excitement, and a lot of questions, which we'll try and answer here on In the Trenches as we go throughout the course of the offseason. And we learn more about this coaching staff and the program moving forward. I'm learning, and that's kind of my goal this offseason as we hit January, February, and March before we get into spring ball, is I'm going to be learning about every single one of these coaches right along with our listeners. And hopefully as I learn, I'll be able to share that knowledge of what the offense is, what it's going to look like, defense, what it's going to look like, the personalities of the coaches, what we know about the coaches. And, as we go today, I'll relay the knowledge that I have of some brief interactions over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because for the first time in a while, we will see a new staff that has not had ties to Michigan football. And you think back to some of the discussions around Dusty May when he got here, had been at FAU for 6 years. What Dusty could do and did at FAU, very different than what he can and has done at Michigan. There are some principles, some core things that Kyle Whittingham will bring from Utah to Michigan. Same thing with his staff, those who have had experience with him at Utah last season, those who had not. There's a lot of moving parts there. And frankly, some of it will be a mystery box until we get to the final weekend of August. We get to Labor Day weekend and early September. I forgot. We're a little bit later this year, a little bit of a longer off season for you, John. My sincerest condolences. But
no Germany trip.
I know, exactly. And also Lou Esposito, the other staff member who stayed. What's that, John?
No suspended coach. So we'll have all coaches available as of now.
Moving on.
And I do think that you bring up a key point too, in regards to like not a lot of connections to really anything. I know Lou Esposito is back. Tony Alford is back. Oh, those guys have been here for 2 years respectively, but there is no connection at all to any other eras of Michigan football on this coaching staff. So that is unique in and of itself as well.
And it probably was the time to do it. There are plenty of great minds who have come through with that Michigan football experience, whether playing or coaching, but with what had endured, what had taken place in this program, if you're ever going to do it, this was the time to do it. And
there are other great minds that weren't connected to or didn't, you didn't have to have an association with Sharon Moore, Jim Harbaugh, Brady Hoke. There's a lot of great minds out there. So it's interesting. And it's just one of the pieces that makes up the puzzle that is this Michigan football staff.
So along those lines, number 2 on our 7 from 77, Kyle Whittingham has had a few weeks under his belt. We've seen some of the work he has done, some of the comments he has made. He joined the broadcast down in Orlando for a good 15, 20 minutes. What's your confidence level? What's your thought on Kyle Whittingham, head coach, Michigan football?
Well, it's been a very busy time around the football offices because of the transfer portal. So, and I'll try and give you some context before I answer the question. The coaches, Sean McGee, the general manager, Champion Circle, everybody involved we had a lot of players jump in the portal. We had a lot of players come out of the portal and stay. Some left, and Michigan has dabbled in the portal as well, taking some players coming from other universities, obviously some coming from Utah. And so the focus of the staff has been simply on, and as well as the assistant coaches and Kyle Whittingham, those that didn't enter the portal, those that did, of just getting to know his team, what he inherited. So I haven't had a lot of interaction, including the broadcast, probably maybe a half hour's worth of interaction with Coach Whittingham. So as I say that, it's to give context of, you ask the question, what are my impressions of, or my confidence level in Kyle Whittingham? Going off his track record is he runs an extremely clean program, which obviously that was one of maybe the most important part in the athletic department hiring Kyle Whittingham and bringing in his staff. He's very familiar with the guys that he brought in, the assistant coaches have been with him a long time. And so there's a familiarity that there, amongst the coaching staff. It's not introducing a new offense or a new defense. Obviously with the players it is, but having been in and around some of the things and conversations between assistant coaches and players, I think they're doing a really nice job of assimilating some of the verbiage on both sides of the ball that the players are familiar with, and anything that is familiar with them that can translate to the new offense, the new defense. They're trying to assimilate some of that stuff to make it easier on the players. Coaches have all day, every day to sit there and learn new terms. If it's familiar to the players, they're going to try and make it as seamless as possible. So, that's what we know. And by all indications, good man, good coach. And the other, what we don't know is, and some of these questions, Doug and I asked him on the broadcast, recruiting the Midwest, recruiting the rest of the country, because when you look at the Utah roster, there were 4 players from the Midwest on his Utah roster, which that's not a negative. It's just being able to go that now, being the leader of a program that can recruit worldwide, coast to coast, north to south, east to west, and making relationships with those high school coaches. That's going to be a question. This isn't the Mountain West. It's not the Pac-12. It's not the Big 12. This is a completely different conference, different teams, and most of the teams in this conference, save Penn State, they're not going to be looking at new programs. Now, what Michigan will be doing will be different, but for the coaching staff, other than some common opponents that Nebraska or that Utah played, these are all going to be new systems, new teams, new players, new everything for these coaches to evaluate. So they're going to have to spend a lot of time this offseason going in and looking at, Ohio State and Ryan Day, Matt Patricia, their offense, defense, looking at, the teams that they're going to play next year. Obviously, Pat Fitzgerald, not new to the Big Ten, but new to East Lansing. And his offense, defense coordinators, like there's just going to be a lot of new things that they're going to have to, get up to speed on.
It's crazy how quickly things can change, right? New coach at Penn State, new coach at Michigan State. Real optimism at both those programs. Urban Meyer's good buddies with the Michigan coach now, and Indiana has a chance to win a national championship. The Big Ten can, any league in college football right now can change quickly, and it will be fascinating to see how Whittingham does it. We'll have more on some of those other topics in a little bit, but
it's going to take me more probably to wrap my mind around the relationship that the head coach of Michigan football has with one Urban Meyer, more so than it's taking me to wrap my mind around Kirk Cignetti and Indiana being currently the best team in the country. And we'll find out Monday night if they are or not.
Can't wait to have Urban on the tailgate show.
If this, well, I can tell you right now, I won't be when that happens. So feel free to have your guests and schedule them as you see fit.
No, there will be no invite and no acceptance of a fabricated invite. Number 3 on our 7 from 77. Let's talk about the roster a little bit. And obviously this is fluid. What we're saying now could change here or be added to sooner rather than later. We don't know. It's the wild, wild west as we've described, but we've seen the campaign LFG 147. If you need to figure out those abbreviations,
what does that mean, Brian?
Team 147. Let's go. I don't know what the F is. We'll have to find that out one of these days. But on that LFG 147, Bryce Underwood, Jordan Marshall, Zeke Berry. There are a bunch of offensive linemen who have done it. Jake Warnera, who briefly entered the portal. Blake Frazier, Andrew Sprague, who I think he also briefly entered the portal. Evan Link, Brady Norton. Also the 5-star freshman, Andrew Babalola, who was drawing rave reviews in training camp last year before the injury. Your thoughts on the foundation? And I'm guessing you're pretty fired up that a good chunk of offensive linemen who showed flashes, and there was a lot of youth in that group, are coming back for 26.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement there. And when you just think about those names and the foundation that is returning, Zeke Berry is your only guy that's going to be a senior. Bryce Underwood coming out of his first year, Jordan Marshall, Jake Warnera, Blake Frazier, Andrew Sprague, all coming out of their second year. Babalola, his first year, Evan Link coming out of his third year, and Brady Norton, the transfer. Like, you got so much youth. And that's one of the things that we talked about all year long, right? The 3 redshirt freshmen starting up front, a second-year player, Jordan Marshall, coming out of the backfield, Andrew Marsh as a wide receiver who, obviously declared that he was staying in Ann Arbor. There's a lot of youth, a lot of guys that had tremendous experience of a 9-win team. And I know we're not talking about expectations for next year yet. All I can say is my expectations are that with the talent inherited on this roster, off and running, hit the ground running, because it's a matter of taking what those players did, the self-evaluation, the self-film watch, the self-scout, those guys making a decision to get with the coaches and then finding out how to improve individually and ultimately collectively on a 9-win season moving into next year.
Bryce Underwood, he's back. There will be a lot discussed about him this offseason like there was last year. We'll learn what kind of foundation he has built with the coaching staff as the offseason goes on. But listen, there's always the intrigue of established veteran quarterbacks. Are you excited about Bryce Underwood? I am, but I also understand that, there were some unique growing pains from him, and I think a lot of them probably weren't his fault, right? But how can he take multiple steps forward? Because it does feel like, boy, the talent was there, but maybe the refinement, the coaching, the day-to-day that he needed wasn't here last year.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is you watch, and it's something that we talked about in the bowl game, throwing off his back foot, and throwing out of rhythm and just not using really good mechanics. Those were things that we saw early on in the season against some of the early opponents and thought that we would see some improvement. And at times there was, but then there was always this regression. And when things get, when they get intense, when they get heated, you're always going to fall back to the habits that you have, what is most familiar to you. And so it was clear that the habits weren't developed for Bryce Underwood. And now it's a matter of this offseason of making new habits, so that, against Oklahoma in week 2 or against Ohio State at the end of the year, you don't see those, at times it's a game of football, right? You're going to throw off schedule. You're going to throw off balance. And he has all those skills to be able to do it. But 90% of the time, you want to be able to set your feet. You want to be able to, make sure that you have all the mechanics set and deliver the football. And all of those things are going to come down to habits. What type of habits can he develop this offseason with this coaching staff? And here's the intangible. You got to want to be coached. That's not something that we've ever questioned about Bryce Underwood. He wants to be coached. He spent time watching film. And as a freshman, you wouldn't expect that you would be watching film and trying to develop yourself. So now having a coaching staff that will help take him to the next level, it's exciting to see what he can become.
A few other players to mention of those returning. Jordan Young did post that he is back, as did Hogan Hansen. Of all the players who we didn't get to see a whole lot of this past year, I'm excited for Hogan Hansen. He might have been Michigan's best non-Colston Loveland tight end a couple of years ago when he was a true freshman. And injury, maybe preservation of a red shirt, whatever it might be, I'm excited about Hogan Hansen in 2026.
I am as well. That's another guy that just needs direction, needs coaching. And, I thought Steve Kasula was a really good fit in that room. It was a talented room. And one of the things that I loved about watching them practice with Coach Kasula as the tight end coach was his attention to detail. And for Hogan Hansen, it wasn't a matter of, can he do it? We knew he could. He was the number 1 tight end when Colston Loveland had any issue the year before, but he had his own health issues this year, getting him healthy, getting him back on the field. The base is there. The coaching has been there. Now can this staff take it to the next level?
All right, number 4 on our 7 from 77. We know there have been other rumors and conversations about other players, but the ones that Michigan has announced that we can discuss, they went right after specialists to start. Punter Cam Brown from UNLV, kicker Trey Butkowski from Pitt, his long snapper Nico Crawford from Pitt. John, I'll let you study the film on those 3 before I ask you for a full breakdown of them.
Sure.
You're welcome. That's the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Oklahoma running back Taylor Tatum, who didn't play a whole lot over 2 seasons, but some bigger names. A couple of receivers, Jamie French, who was at Texas last year, only had 1 catch, but he was a 4-star recruit. Definitely someone who has some big time potential. JJ Buchanan, he comes in from Utah, had 26 catches last season. He appeared in all of their 13 games this season. In fact, Scott here saying JJ Buchanan is version Colston 2.0. So some hot take there. We'll see. And also probably the biggest resume get, so not probably, but the biggest resume get among those who are officially Michigan Wolverines, John Henry Daly, All-American defensive end at Utah over the last couple of the seasons. So thoughts on what is official, and in particular, John Henry Daly, who, boy, he jumps off the screen, the stat sheet, all of it. An exciting get.
Yeah, I mean, he adds a lot of production to this defense, and he's, 6'4", 247, probably going to play a little bit bigger than that this coming year. And I just mentioned all those offensive linemen that were second-year players. John Henry Daly is coming out of his second year with 11.5 sacks. So it is exciting to add him to the defense. And out of all those names that you said, I'm sure that our listeners will probably not, find this to be strange, but the one thing I got hung up on, other than my words, was Jamie French. When I first saw his name, I'm like, well, it must be a spelling error. Because there's 2 F's at the beginning of his last name. So I don't know if we're supposed to say French or if it's just, as you mentioned, French. And I'm curious, when we get a chance to talk to him, I want to know more about his name. Those are the type of things that I'm hoping to enlighten our listeners about, like what is the origination, why 2 F's, all those different things. So yeah, I mean, it's I noticed weird things. I get it. But as I don't know a lot about these players, we're left with looking at names and looking at players that have come from Utah that are familiar with the offensive and defensive schemes, that are familiar with their position coaches. I think having some of those in here, and not even talking about the production of a John Henry Daly, but just when those players are in those rooms, when other players that are going to be contributors have questions about the system, they don't always have to talk to the coach. Hey, what is coach meaning when he says this? How did you interpret this over the last couple of years? That's going to help, it continue for this offense defense to learn what the expectations are and what it looks like in practice, or in playing versus just sitting a meeting on a chalkboard.
The other aspect about learning about these players, I'll be interested to see why and how John Henry Daly went from BYU to Utah. Because, listen, it's not Michigan, Ohio State, but that is a feisty rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes.
I'll be curious whenever we get to visit.
I have
with
a
John
question
about
for
that.
you, and I don't know if you noticed this because we were standing on a lower level when I mentioned to Coach Whittingham, and I asked him a question about the rivalry, and I referenced the BYU-Utah rivalry. We've always referenced it as the Holy War, and I know that when you look it up, that's how it's referenced. But did you notice his answer to me? It was, he said, I think his words were, and it's not going to be exactly, but as you phrased it, the Holy War. Is it not called that in Utah? Is it just outside that rivalry? That's how we reference it, but they don't reference it as such?
I don't know. A lot of people outside Michigan and Ohio State refer to Ohio State as Ohio State. A lot of Michigan fans don't refer to it some other 4-letter words. So maybe there's some difference out there.
Yeah. Well, we can, the Buckeyes, that one I always get tripped up on with how that one starts. Sometimes it's with a B, sometimes it's with another letter. Yeah. So I understand.
LFG.
Yes. Attaboy.
I don't know. I have always looked at it and said it as the Holy War. I think that's a great nickname for a rivalry.
I do too.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll find out from Coach here as we go along. Obviously, with all of what is happening in college football and what is happening with Michigan football, our friends at Champion Circle have been quite busy, as you would expect. John, tell our fans about Champion Circle.
Yeah, and this, I already referenced them one time, but Champion Circle is the leading Michigan athletics fan engagement community. Champion Circle connects fans with once-in-a-lifetime experiences, produces public and private events, offers club memberships, and operates an online retail store selling exclusive apparel, trading cards, which yours truly happens to be a part of those. Yeah, that's awesome. Autographs and other memorabilia featuring Michigan student athletes. To become a member or learn more about how you can support your favorite Michigan student athletes or alumni, visit championscircleUofM.com. Shameless plug there, I know. That's championscircleUofM.com. Champion Circle is a proud sponsor of the University of Michigan Athletics.
Tough to be more shameless, John. That was well
it
executed.
Is.
Great to be back. Great
hey,
to be back.
If I'm not going to promote myself, who's going to do it? Let's go. LFG.
That's right. 147. All right. Number 5. Obviously, some portal departures. There's also some NFL draft departures, which we will talk about plenty as we get closer and closer to the combine and then through the NFL draft process. I know football games are over on the college side of the national championship game, but we stay busy. There'll be a lot going on. Now, Michigan did lose some names to the portal. Some of the guys who have found homes, at least reportedly, Cole Sullivan going to Oklahoma. Jasper Parker heads to Arkansas. Caden Strayhorn to Alabama, where he was interested out of high school. Samaj Morgan, UCLA. Davis Warren. Boy, that dude's going to have some degrees, huh? From Michigan to Stanford. Congrats to him. Frederick Moore goes to Michigan State. There are others still in the portal. The biggest name is Justice Haynes. A lot of guys from the Michigan secondary. TJ Metcalf, Brandon Hillman, Jaden Sanders, Elijah Dotson, Jordan Young coming back, sorry. And then Eno Etta is also coming in the portal. Again, a lot of moving parts. Among those names, let's start with those who have landing spots. We'll talk about some of the others who are still in the portal, and hey, you never know. But any thoughts on them? Probably Cole Sullivan being the biggest name.
Yeah, he certainly is. And man, I sure hated to lose him. I know Michigan fans hated to lose him. The coaching staff hated to lose him because of how he came on last year. And no, not just what he did, but now you look at that room. No Jay Sean Barham, no Ernest Hausman, no Jimmy Rolder, no Cole Sullivan. Those were the guys that we talked a lot about. And we did see some younger players step in and play well. So it's not like that position is devoid of talent, but Cole Sullivan was that guy that we thought would be back leading that group, leading this defense. And that one really stings. It does. And, tremendous player, tremendous individual. Loved it when I had a chance to sit down and talk to Cole Sullivan, whether it was behind the mic or just as a couple of guys talking in the football office. He is as solid as they come. So wish them all the best of luck. Caden Strayhorn, I thought he did a really nice job in the bowl game when Kripp went down at center. And then all of a sudden Guarnera goes over to center. Strayhorn goes in. And I had a chance to talk to him, obviously, throughout the Coach of the Week when I was coaching with him. And I said, hey, you just never know. You've got to be ready. He had a tremendous week of practice, and his number was called early in that game. I thought he did a great job of going in there and performing well, played low, played with good pad level, and shoulders square. So disappointed that he's not going to be back as well. And you start looking at the offensive line, as much as we'll miss Cole Sullivan on defensively, Caden Strayhorn could be that sneaky one that got away because Jake going to center. Now who's your backup center? And I've talked to all these guys. Hey, I don't care who you are. You should all be snapping, but they're going to have to go in the portal and find a backup center or teach one of these guys and get them up to speed in case something were, God forbid, happen to Jake.
Comment from YedMike16. You almost said Etta is coming back with an eye emoji. That was just me stumbling over Jordan Young. That was just bad broadcasting. So no inside info on Eno Etta. We'll see, but that was not. I wanted to make sure to clear that up. That no, I don't have any inside information on Eno Etta's thoughts. Among the guys who are still in the portal, obviously Justice Haynes is the biggest name in there, and I understand. Personally, I was a little bit surprised that it looks like he's going to come back to college football, not just because of what he's been able to put on tape, but also there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of stud running backs coming out, unlike this past season from an NFL draft standpoint. But hey, you never know what's potentially out there in terms of opportunity, money in college. Hey, more power to you. I think two things can be true at once with Justice. it'll be a bummer not to have him, but you also need to realize who you already have and what you've already committed to in terms of recruiting, money to that running back room. I think Michigan is going to be just fine from a running back standpoint based on what they've added and what they have.
Yeah, I think they will. And I think you bring up a key point, and that's been one of the conversations over the last couple of weeks that's just completely blows my mind in regards to, well, we're allocating this much money for this position. And it just it blows my mind. But in terms of Justice Haynes, whether or not he's back at Michigan, and we know he's entered the portal, probably not going to be back at Michigan, but just in college football, the decision to go to the NFL or stay in college football is a funny one in regards to what can he get for another year of college football in terms of a payday versus what would it look like if he's going to be late second, maybe third round pick. I think there's a lot of these guys that if you're just going to the highest bidder in college football may actually make more playing that extra year before going to the NFL draft if you're going to be mid to late second round or even in the third round. And you look at some of these quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers, you think he would have maybe made a different decision knowing all the money that's being thrown around now versus being a 6th or 7th round draft pick versus what we're hearing from the quarterback position, $4, $5, and even $6 million for just 1 year?
So just pulling up, this is according to Spot Track, which does a great job for kind of NFL salary cap stuff and all that. Just throwing out a number here, the 50th overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft will have $9.6 million over the course of a 4-year deal, 1.75 as a rookie, then 2.2, 2.6, and 3.06. So I'm always a big believer at most positions in the NFL, and you're just talking about the monetary side in football, the real money comes with your second NFL contract. Right. Whatever puts you in position to maximize the non-rookie scale contract is where you make and have the ability to make the generational money. That's not always the case at running back. And that's, there were a number of reasons Blake Corum came back. I do think one of them was probably the reality that you could probably make similar money, if not more, in college football, even back then when it wasn't quite as robust, if we will.
Right. Yeah. It's not even close when Blake was coming back. It's not anywhere even in the ballpark of what these players are making now. So the numbers that you just mentioned there for the 50th, and that's if Justice were to go that high, it's from what I'm hearing, that first year would be a pay cut. Yep. And so, but to your point, it's years 2, 3, and then if you do well and you're a second round or later pick and you're on a 4-year deal, are you able to get that second contract after year 3? So it's always a math equation, and you're rolling the dice, and it's going to be interesting to see how this affects players' decisions moving forward. And where does college football go from here? Because having seen everything going on, knowing that it's going on here, knowing that it's going on at every major football program, it was absolute chaos. And I don't think it's sustainable. I don't know where the rules come from, but I do think there's going to have to be some parameters set sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we'll have those discussions as we go along, but they're just going to be conversations that, who knows? What is obvious now might not be obvious a year from now. All the calendar that coaches are complaining about now with the portal and the playoff and all that was the calendar that they wanted. So that was back in the day. Yeah. We'll see. Speaking of the playoff, number 6 on our 7 from 77, I did want to make sure to discuss what we have seen so far. Yet again, a one higher seed in terms of number, 10th seeded Miami, a team that many didn't think was going to get in the playoff. They were the last at large to get in. They play in the national championship against Indiana coming up on Monday. And of course, our friends at Modelo, they've been telling us about the college football playoff all season. Some things are just made for each other. Peanut butter and jelly, macaroni and cheese, Modelo and college football. If you're listening to this, you live and breathe football all season long, even at the very end. So makes you a full-time fan, which means you deserve a Modelo, because football wouldn't be the same without you. Modelo, the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff. John, your takeaways from the first 10 games of the, hard to believe, still only the second iteration of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah. It's interesting one. So a take that I had early on, and I know everybody says, well, the power, the group of five should have a seat at the table. JMU and Tulane, they wasted our time. They wasted games and didn't think that she should be a part of it. They need to be able to earn their way in. If you're ranked in the top 12, hey, I would love to see a JMU top 12 ranked team in the postseason. Tulane, if you're in the top 12, I'd love to see that in the postseason. But if you're ranked 25, and just simply because you were, the highest ranked group of five, or you were, one of the top four ranked, power, conferences, like I just don't believe that you should just get a seat at the table because of that. It should just be the top 12 teams. Here's the other thing. They're the only team that's been able to disprove the myth of getting the bye. They were able to get a win and a win by 35 over Alabama, and then a win by 34 over Oregon. They have looked as dominant as you can imagine. And it's Indiana that has been the most dominant team this year. And so obviously you look at all those other teams with byes. It was Ohio State lost to Miami, Georgia lost to Ole Miss, Texas Tech lost to Oregon. I am curious if there is something about that bye week that teams looking moving forward on what they're going to be able to do about it. It's not like you're going to take a loss, just because you don't want the bye. But if they go to 16, and I know there was rumor this morning that, that you could do it as early as next year. What do they do with those byes? Do they get rid of them because of the track record of one win over 2 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and who knows if we'll get there. There's, discussions about this firm deadline a little bit more than a week from now about potentially enhancing to 16. I don't think it's enhancing. I'm good with 12. I think it would have been really clean if the ACC just had a common sense tiebreaker, and there would have been Miami and Notre Dame in, and there would have been one group of five to have that representation. But I think this is always going to be tweaked. I think 12 is pretty good.
Yeah.
Who do you got, Indiana or Miami on Monday?
Indiana. And I mean, it seems like I don't know how many people are going to pick Miami. I think there will be some, but with as dominant as Indiana has been against Alabama and Oregon, when you look at the average age of Indiana is almost 24 years old. It's a high 23 versus 21 for Miami. That's kind of one of the secret things I think Kurt Cignetti has done, is not just going into the portal to get the best available, but to get the best available with as much experience. And so I think that's interesting. Miami, they're able to pressure the quarterback with Messidor and Bain, 19 sacks between the two of them, but they didn't really have that big of an impact against Ole Miss. And the veteran offensive line that Indiana has, I do think they'll be able to keep them at bay. And here's something that's interesting. When you think about, one of the talking points about Indiana or about Miami is this attacking defense, and they're after the quarterback, and they're doing all these things to harass the opponents and stop the run. Miami's totaled 47 sacks on the season. Indiana has totaled 45 sacks on the season. And they don't necessarily have that 10.5 sack guy. There's no double-digit sack guy, but their linebackers, 8 sacks by Hardy, 3.5 sacks by Fisher, who I think is an unbelievable football player, is their linebacker, 7 sacks by Jones, all three of those guys linebackers, and then defensive linemen, they're getting 4 to 5 sacks almost across the board. Now, Steve Daly is out, for the playoffs. We saw that injury, but Tyrese Tucker is doing a tremendous job up front. A lot of guys that no one's really talked about other than Mendoza and maybe one or two receivers, but this is a team in Indiana that's a veteran team. They're disciplined. They don't make mistakes. And when you look at one of the things Miami's been good at is forcing turnovers. Round one against Texas A&M, they forced 3 turnovers. Against Ohio State, they forced 2 turnovers. Now, they didn't have any against Ole Miss, but were able to come away with the win. I just think Indiana is the more disciplined team. You look at Miami and the losses that they've had, or even the games that they've won closely, they have like a bad third quarter, or they have a bad second quarter, or there's a key turnover. I don't know that I necessarily trust Mario Cristobal to have a perfect game in terms of not a close to perfect game. He's had some gaffes in his past in terms of just clock management and what he does at the end of halves and the end of games. So I just believe that Indiana is more polished. They're more veteran, and I think Indiana walks away with it.
So it sounds like you're saying the spread is 8.5. You think Indiana wins by, say, double digits?
It's a national championship game, but yeah, I do. I really think they do.
Crazy. It's truly one of the most remarkable stories in our lifetimes in sports if they win this national championship.
And here's the thing is when we start looking down the road, if they do win the national championship and we start looking down the road at this Indiana team, and we compare it to some of the Georgia teams, we compare it to Michigan's national championship team, we compare it to Ohio State last year, like this Indiana team is going to stack up as one of the best over the last 10, 20 years.
There was a real discussion over whether there would ever be a 16-0 team in this 12-team model. And I think you and I both were on the side of it's going to be really difficult to do. And they have a chance to not just do it, but get it done pretty emphatically, which is crazy. All right, number 7, one of those, angel on one shoulder, devil on the other. Colston Loveland's becoming an absolute star. Unfortunately, for those who are in the great state of Michigan who are Lions fans, that means it's happening for the Chicago Bears, though it did happen to the Green Bay Packers. So I guess there's something there. Your takeaways on what you've seen from the NFL playoffs and who you have right now as the favorites to play in the Super Bowl.
Well, it's interesting because I think Ben Johnson figured out what that middle letter stands for in LFG. I think he figured that one out and let everybody know what that was after the game. But it's been an amazing playoffs with the amount of lead changes, 12 lead changes in the fourth quarter through just the first weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday of the NFL playoffs. And now we're looking at it. We haven't seen the Broncos yet. We haven't seen the Seahawks yet, both number 1 seeds. And it'll be interesting to see in terms of the NFC. I want to say it's the Rams that eventually come out, but obviously they had a nail biter against Carolina. I think they're the most well-balanced team, although I don't necessarily want to bet against the defense of Mike McDonald. Hell, I'm going with Mike McDonald and the Seahawks out of the NFC. The AFC, interesting matchup with Bills-Broncos. Strength on strength, weakness on weakness, and that is the Bills' offense against the Broncos' defense. And how much do you trust Bo Nix against a banged up and depleted and not performing extremely well Bills defense? I think that's interesting. And then Texans, Patriots. The Patriots still, have they really beat anyone this year? But they've had 15 wins. So I think
let's come to the college football playoff committee and see what they think.
Right. Yes. The data points. I think I'm going to go with the Bills. I think this is Josh Allen's year, and I think the Bills ultimately win the Super Bowl.
Okay. That throw he made on that go-ahead touchdown drive, the off the back foot 40. I mean, there's
only 1 or 2 guys that can do that currently, and there are years in the NFL where guys can't even make that throw.
Here's my bold prediction for this week. I think we are going to have in one of the 2 conferences a wild card team host their conference championship game.
A 5 seed, yeah.
So a 5 seed. So both road teams win this week. I think it could happen on either side. I'll tell you this. I think the best unit left in the playoffs is the Houston defense.
I would agree with that.
They were awesome. And I mean, the Texans were inviting Pittsburgh to stay in that game offensively. And the defense, I know that's not going to gain a lot of the headlines from Wild Card Weekend because it was, the Chargers Patriots game wasn't offensive, but it was still that was a close game for 3 quarters. The Texans Steelers one was only close in the score until it wasn't, and they're not going to get a lot of the conversation points because of just how great these other ones were. I'm blown away by the defense that Houston plays.
Yeah, and it all starts up front, obviously with their 2 edges, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. the ability of those guys to pressure the quarterback, the ability of those guys to be used in unique ways. Danielle Hunter's more of the pass rusher, and Will Anderson is as well, but they can use Will Anderson as we've seen the Lions use Aiden Hutchinson, but a little bit more effectively, drop it into some zones and creating some situations defensively. D'Amico Ryans has done a tremendous job of coaching that team, and obviously he's a defensive-minded head coach. So it's I do think that's going to be a very interesting game for the Patriots. How can they give some of those offensive tackles some help on the edges? To be able to give Drake May, and Drake May, we saw in that game, right at the end of the first half, a 36-yard run. Like, can he get some of those moments where he just simply picks up a first down at a critical time, whether it's to extend a drive or to put the game away at the end of the game? The Texans are going to New England, and that's only a 2.5-point spread in favor of New England. So it's going to be I think this is the most wide open field. And you could make an argument for, I just made the argument for the Bills. You could, not much of an argument for the Niners, but the Seahawks, hell, the Broncos, the Texans, the Patriots, Rams, and probably not the Bears, but there are 6 of the 8 teams left that you can make an argument should be Super Bowl champs this year, or could be.
I'm not counting out anybody left, including the 49ers. I didn't think, and odds makers certainly didn't. That spread kept going up and up and up. I think it opened like 3.5, closed at 6 or 6.5 in Philadelphia, and they were the more connected team. Now the George Kittle injury, brutal, such a gut punch. Feel terrible for seemingly one of the really good dudes in the NFL. But I'm not counting on anybody because this is as wide open as possible. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's our return here on In the Trenches. If you're locked in on the YouTube side, wait for us to finish up, but comment after the show. Give us some ideas, off-season wishes for styles of shows, interview guests. We'd love to hear from you on how we can add to your Michigan football weight, because it's going to be a little bit of a wait, but obviously so much to discuss over the next 8 months until we get to that opening kickoff for the Wolverines in 2026. John Jansen, any final thoughts?
No, it's just going to be interesting to see how, this team comes together for Michigan. See what the coaching staff, they're going to have to adapt just as much as the players are, and how that adaptation works in regards to recruiting, in terms of the transfer portal, in terms of getting ready, playing in the Big Ten. It's going to be a very entertaining year.
And a former Wolverine tuning in here. How about that? Good to see you.
Hey, Alfie Birch. All right, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, give me a shout. We'd love to have you on the podcast.
There we go. All right. For John and Alfie, I'm Brian. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be with you all off season long right here on In the Trenches, presented by Meyer.